Welcome to this episode of Music with Tony Toppi. Today's episode will focus on the analysis component of the VCE Music Performance subject. This is part one, and we're going to be talking about expressive elements and, in particular, tempo, dynamics, and articulation. This is a very large topic for the VCE curriculum, so this episode will be in a few different parts. So let's move straight along. What is analysis and why is it important? So basically, analysis is the process of unpacking the music and listening to all the different components. We will discover how music works or how a particular piece works. We'll uncover all the layers of the music. But most importantly, as this subject is called VCE Music Performance, it's here to help us to improve our own performance skills. How do we do that? By investigating how others tell the stories in music and how others interpret music, and therefore how we can also. So it's basically taking the tools that other musicians have used and incorporating them into our own performance. Expressive outcome. This is the big one when actually answering a question on the VCE Music Performance written exam. And we are looking at how the different elements of music contribute to the expressive outcome. So, what is the expressive outcome? It's the overall effect that the music has on the listener. Everyone will have a different opinion of the expressive outcome. That is actually okay, and that's not right, nor is it wrong. Everyone will respond differently to any part or any bit of music that they hear. But the main aspect with the analysis questions is that we justify your expressive outcome with concrete musical examples. What do I mean by concrete musical examples? They are the actual things that you actually hear that no one will be able to dispute you on. For example, I heard a crescendo, and a crescendo will be very hard to dispute. Or I heard a major tonality, for example. Things that are actually in the actual music that you hear, not an interpretation. It's often easy to get tricked on an exam, but other words for expressive outcome may be general character, mood, or expression. There will be a variety of words that may be used, as have been in the past, but they all mean the same thing. So, simply put, all analysis questions will ask you to identify certain elements of music and discuss how they affect the expressive outcome. So this is the main idea of what we are doing here. But of course, the broader purpose of doing this is for it to inform your own performance. So in today's episode, you'll actually hear me playing a few little snippets of music that will help to highlight various parts of these elements. So, what are elements of music? Elements of music are parts of the music that we will investigate. So we have two categories, what I call fixed elements, meaning those that are given that cannot be changed or not open to interpretation, and then the expressive elements, which are the ones that are open to interpretation. So what are some fixed ones? Duration, which we take to mean beat, rhythm, and meter. You can't change the rhythm of a piece of music, especially if it's notated, nor can we change the beat or the meter. Pitch, so that's melody, harmony, and tonality. The composer or writer has taken the time to give us these notes and these harmonies and melodies. It's up to us as performers to respect that and to perform them as per the sheet music. The structure of the music, not open to interpretation, so meaning you can't change it willy-nilly. However, depending on if you're doing group performance, perhaps there might be license to play around with the structure, especially in a jazz work. But all in all, this is something that is fixed by the composer or writer. The texture of the work, so how many notes are playing at one time, generally will not be open to interpretation. And the instrumentation. If you're playing a piano sonata, you wouldn't necessarily play it on a flute, for example. You wouldn't be able to get the full expression or the full idea of the piece. The expressive elements, this list is a bit longer. We have tempo, dynamics, articulation, tone color, balance of musical lines, blend of instrumental voices, phrasing, embellishment, ornamentation, and improvisation. All of these are the parts that make music unique to the performer. And these are the areas that you will have to incorporate into your own performance. But as far as analysis is concerned, we're going to assess how other performers approach these areas. So, as I said earlier on, tempo, dynamics, and articulation are the topic of this particular episode. So let's launch straight into tempo. A picture of a metronome there for you, because metronome is something you should be using all the time. So what is tempo? It is the speed of the music, simply put. And there are various words that we could use: fast, slow, moderate, allegro, andante, moderato, many words. We can go on and on and on, and you can find a list of these words on any good theory textbook. We have metronome markings, so a particular speed at which you ought to adjust the metronome, and they often look like this. But one thing to look for when listening to a piece of music is the changes and the variations to the tempo. That's what helps to create the expression. So we have words, or we have phrases like rubato, ritardando, rallentando. There are many more, of course, like più mosso, meno mosso, ritenuto, all these different Italian words that all help us to change and vary the tempo to achieve a particular expressive outcome. So let's have a listen to something. So as to see, how does tempo affect the expressive outcome? So today I'll be playing for you this little sonatina by Beethoven. It comes from his Zwei leichte Sonaten. Apologies to any German-speaking audience members. And it's just a short piece. It's not on the VCE syllabus, but it's a good one just to highlight a few different little areas to do with tempo, dynamics, and articulation. So what do we have here? We do actually have an indication of what the tempo should be. And it's up here at the top, moderato. So we're going to be playing this at a moderate speed. In a way, that's a bit open to interpretation. So we are going to play around with that. So I'm going to play the whole piece through without repeats, and I want you to think about two things. The mood that I'm trying to create. I'm not going to tell you what it is. I want you to work out what you feel it is, because in an exam you actually won't be told. You'll just have to listen and decide for yourself. And any variations that may occur. So hopefully over that course of 30 or so bars, you were able to feel some sort of emotional connection with that music and what perhaps it might be saying to you. So I'm going to ask you, did you hear any variations? And hopefully you did. Now I'm going to actually have a little play, and you may have heard a little bit of a variation here in bars, I think it's around 15 and 16 there. something happened that's not marked. But once again, I had my own interpretation there. If you picked out that it would sort of slow down a bit, you would have been correct. I put a bit of a rel in there, meaning a gradual slowing down of the tempo. A couple of reasons why I did that. One reason is because it's the return of the new themes, so I wanted to create a little bit of suspense for the listener as we get back into the main theme. Also, it's a little bit of a stylistic interpretation as well. It's something that Beethoven, in Beethoven's time, in the classical period, would have been done in a sonata at that point. The second part also would have been right at the end of the sonata there, or the first. This is actually the first of two movements. But I did the similar thing. I put a rel there because it was stylistic, but also it just gives the piece a sense of finality, which is very different to the middle version. Yeah. So I'm going to play at least the first 8 bars one more time. And I'm going to actually reinterpret this idea of moderato. So you can interpret almost moderato for the crotchet beats or the minim beats or quaver beats, whatever you like. Yes, the time signature suggests that it is in common time, so we should be thinking in terms of crotchet beats. So moderato, which is probably slower than what you might feel. And here's an idea of what it would sound like if I was interpreting the crotchets as moderato and quite slow. So I'm not sure if that created any different sense of mood for you or expression. I certainly hope it did, because it's a very drastic change to what I played before. And then as a flip side to that, let's now interpret the minims as the moderato. So it's going to have more of a 2 feel perhaps, which might technically be wrong, but once again, it's interpretation. Couple little wrong notes there, sorry. But that's the idea of having a different tempo. I'm going to leave it up to you which one you like the best, because as a performer, you have to make that choice as to which one you like the best for your own mood and expression. From an analysis perspective, you would have to make comment on the tempo that a performer has chosen to perform at to create their sense of mood and purpose. Moving on to our next topic for the day, dynamics. So what are dynamics? Dynamics is the volume of the music, simply put. So we have many different words to associate: forte, piano, mezzo forte, mezzo piano, crescendo, decrescendo, diminuendo, basically loud, soft, medium volume, etc., etc. The list does go on. But what do we have to talk about? It's not enough just to say that the piece is piano or forte or something like this. We have to be able to talk about the causes and the reasons for the change of dynamics. If you were to play everything at one volume in any piece, it would be quite boring. So performers make the choice to use dynamics to create more of a story in their music, because that's actually what we are doing here. So there is a multitude of reasons why dynamics can be changed or affected. We have things like articulation can affect it. We have things like texture, amount of instruments being used, amount of notes in a particular chord, rhythm. The list goes on. It can also be relative to the melodic line. So generally speaking, especially looking at Baroque style music and possibly early classical, this is a very generalization here, and I appreciate that this comment might cause some issues, but generally speaking, in these earlier forms of music, if the melody goes higher, we ought to crescendo or get louder, and decrescendo as we get lower in the melody. Sometimes this rule or this idea isn't followed in more recent music, but it's definitely not only in Baroque and classical, so I appreciate that, but it's certainly more pertinent there. We also look at silence, if there's any silence in the music, because guess what? Silence is a volume. It's as if you've turned your keyboard or you've turned your iPod off or something like that. So, how do dynamics affect the expressive outcome? Once again, I'm going to play the same piece, the Little Sonata by Beethoven, with a variety of different expressions with dynamics. Some might be on the page, some might not be on the page. So, first thing, what is actually on the page? Right at the beginning, you will see there's a little P there, which signifies piano. So this is, in general, a soft piece. We have a decrescendo over here in bar number 2. And then we've got nothing else until approximately bar 9, where we have a mezzo forte. I'm not going to bother going through everything else, because if you look further on the next line at around bar 18, you will also see there's a decrescendo there. And then at the beginning of the coda on the second to last line, you'll see another MF. So I'm not going to bother repeating the certain things I've already mentioned. So I'm going to have a play again, and I'll play through the entire piece once. Once again, no repeats. And I'm going to add in, or I suppose express, different dynamics throughout. I'll just point out that all these recordings are actually live, so a few little wrong notes there. I want you to reassure you, VCE students, even us people, teachers who have performing for years and years and years, little slips still happen, and it can happen to you in an examination. Don't stress, just keep going. It's better that you keep the mood of the music going than worry about 1 or 2 wrong notes. Anyway, that's my little embarrassment speech right over. Let's move on. So, hopefully you heard some variations in dynamics that aren't actually on the page. What were they there for? For me personally, to create more mood, suspense, to create a bit more delicacy in the music. Perhaps if you look in the last 1.5 lines of the piece, you will see that we actually have 2 repeated phrases. And that sort of repeats. A rule in music, if you have 2 repeated phrases, then you would play the second one slightly different to the first. Let's imagine if your teacher keeps repeating their same phrase over and over and over in the same way, you'd probably switch off and not listen, which is why we tend to vary our voice tone or the way we present certain ideas. Anyway, back to the topic. So, I'm going to now play bars 5 to 8. So that's the end of the first line and going up to the repeat bar. And I'm going to put no changes whatsoever. So I tried my best there to play every note at the exact same volume. You get a big tick for your accurate notes and accurate rhythms, but you would get very low marks on the idea of expression. So, what did I do differently? Let's see if you can pick out what I did. So So hopefully you heard that in that last bar there, I actually put a mini decrescendo, which is actually in piano, or in fact all music, a bit of a rule. 2-note slur, second note is softer, but also, rules are made to be broken. You could not do it that way, but I think in this particular style, it gives it a nice rounded finish and a sense of completion at the end of the first section. So secondly, I'm going to play bars 15 and 16, which is the third line, third and fourth bar in, once again with 0 changes. Once again, full marks for correct notes and correct rhythms, but not so much on the expression elements. So what would I do? So hopefully you heard that I put there's that decrescendo. That I put a crescendo going up that scale and a decrescendo coming out. Once again, the melody is going higher, so I put a crescendo, melody going lower, so I put a decrescendo. A similar thing actually happened, I won't say by accident, but just by instinct, I suppose, in the previous 2, 3, 4 bars as well, with those descending scales. Finally, you may have also heard something happen over here. So this is the coda area. I'm going to play the coda again from where the mezzo forte symbol is. And once again, 0 changes. So that's what I like to call a Sibelius performance. For those who are not familiar with Sibelius, it's a notation program where you can punch notes in and it spits out the sound. So there was no expression there at all, I felt anyway, and I felt a bit robotic playing it. So what would I do? Here's a little example. The melody goes up over here at the beginning of the coda, so I'm going to put a mini crescendo. Something softer maybe, louder. And then what do I do here? So as I mentioned, I played a bit louder there. And what do I do right at the end? I put a little decrescendo out once again to create this sense of completion. This is going to touch a little bit on a further topic that I'll discuss in a later episode, but it's also got a bit of a link to phrasing, I think, about how we actually communicate the different sentences in the music. So, just to finish off this particular part of the episode, we need to decide how soft are you going to play your piano, how loud is your mezzo forte, etc., etc. There is no rules as to how soft is and how loud is. It's up to you as the performer to decide based on the context of the music and how well you are informed in this area. Okay, so moving on to our final topic for the day, which is articulation. What is articulation? Articulation is how a note or a chord is actually played. And you can see a few little pictures there of notes and chords being played. We speak about the attack and the decay, or onset and release. So how we start a note, how we end the note. Types of accents include types of articulation include accents, tenuto, staccato, legato, sforzando, etc., etc. I'll leave it up to you to go and have a bit of research as to what they all mean. Once again, we're looking in an analysis situation for the variations. We can have strong attacks, gradual decays, slow attacks, sudden decays. The list goes on about what you can have with regards to how you start and end a note. Of course, every instrument will have its own idiosyncrasies with how they approach articulations. A piano articulation will be very different to what a violin can do, for example. So, for example, violins can have a nice swell into the note, meaning a gradual attack, whereas pianos do not. We can either have just a strong, harsh sound at the beginning or a warmer sound at the beginning of a note, but at the end of the day, we can't swell into a note in the same way a wind instrument or a stringed instrument can. Similarly, with vocal articulations, there's another whole set of terminology for that, which we might spend another episode later on. But we have things like glottal attacks, aspirate onset, aspirate decay, gospel releases, bending up, bending down, gliding, etc., etc. So let's move straight on. How does articulation affect the expressive outcome? Once again, I'm going to play the same piece again with a few different little variations as we go. So, first thing, what do we actually see on the score? Not many notated articulation marks. In fact, only slurs. No staccatos, no tenutos, no accents, nothing like that. We have to sort of a bit rely on our stylistic understanding and historically informed in performance practice techniques so we can actually interpret what's on the page. I'm pretty sure Beethoven did not mean for us to play the bass line like this. There would have to be some sort of shape or some sort of more interest to those lines. So here we go from the top once again. So, hopefully you heard a few different sorts of articulation in there. But the first thing we're going to point out is the grace note over here. And there are quite a few of these little grace notes. How do we play the grace note? Do we give it a bit of weight? Do we give it a bit more of literally gracefulness? Or so a few different ways you can approach a grace note like that. Once again, from an analysis perspective, what is the mood that that little grace note creates? That's got a little articulation to it. Next, I would like to talk about these little two-note slurs which occur sort of throughout. And we can have something like this. So I've sort of tried to show each group of two, but how would I actually play that on a decrescendo? I need to make sure that I'm not bashing out the first of each group. So I'm still able to keep those little two-note slurs. Once again, how does that affect the expressive outcome? Does it give a sense of forward movement? Does it give a sense of retreat? What do you feel? Then we actually look at the first bar there with those minims. There's no slur connecting them. There's no tenuto to say they should be separated. There's no staccato, nothing like that. So I could play them separated. Or I could play them connected. So in context, that was a bit separated. Played them together. You make the choice. Personally, I like the separated version better. That's just me, but everyone will have a different idea. Secondly, over here in the 7th bar, we have these crotchets. How should they be played? Once again, we've got sort of 3 options here: staccato, tenuto, or slurred. So I could play them. Or I could play them with a bit more length. Just notice how the tempo is hopefully not changing. As performers, we tend to play staccatos faster than everything else for some reason. Maybe we don't like silence, who knows. Anyhow, putting them into context, so I'll play the right hand also and try to keep my left hand staccato. Now with the more tenuto feel. And now with the more legato feel. So 3 different interpretations there. You decide what you think based on style and based on the expression that you would like to create. So that's actually it for today. Oh no, there's one last thing I do want to show you. My apologies. Bar 10, which is there, sorry. I would like to show you this, whether we do it as a legato, tenuto, or staccato again. So this is how I would play it. I'll play from bar 11. So I've actually done those 2 together. So that was the legato version. There's nothing marked. So once again, I've got a bit of open to interpretation. That was the more tenuto separated, or that was a staccato version. I like the staccato one way. It gives it a little bit of a playful nature, whereas the legato gives it a bit more of a graceful dance-like feel to me. Oop, I said I wouldn't tell you any of my ideas, but here we are. Sorry. Similarly, we look at this bar here, bar 15. I could do a similar thing. Slurred, tenuto, staccato. So all different ways that you can approach and interpret the music. Once again, all based on your choices and your interpretation. So that is actually the end of today's episode. Thank you for watching. If you have any comments, suggestions, or questions, you can please email me at tonytoppi@me.com. Thank you.